So you have an offer from a startup, or probably want to know, is it better to join a startup or continue in your MNC? This video is for you. Let's begin. Awesome. I stay in Bangalore and just a few kilometers from my home, there is a startup hub named HSR Layout. This place called HSR Layout has close to 1,000 startups. Can you believe it? It's 1,000 startups. Okay, there are a few startups which work from, which are in 1 BHK flats. There are some startups which work from 2 BHK flats. Some startups which have some dedicated buildings. Some startups which work on a shared workspace, probably WeWork. So what we can say, there is a startup tsunami here. So like every company, even the startups have their pros and cons. Should we begin with cons? No, let's begin with pros. Pros. I got tempted with the pros there. Okay, so let's start with the pros. Okay, first thing first, the greatest pros of working in a startup is you get paid really well. Yes, I think that starts the mood, right? That sets the rhythm here. You get paid really high compared to other MNCs. The pay will be way higher. Probably a 2 years or 3 years experienced guy probably may be paid around 30-35 lakhs. Point number one, you get paid. Awesome. So I was placed in a service company when I was out of college, and I was on bench for almost 4 months. 4 months. It's enough to forget whatever we learned in engineering. So what happens in startup is, like, from the day one, you will be boarding a train which is super fast. You will have to learn things quickly. You will have to learn to do things quickly. You will have to learn to do things parallel. You will start to learn technologies much faster than what others are doing in an MNC. Okay, point number three, impactful work. What the hell is impactful work? When I was placed in a service company, I was called by so-called RMG, Resource Management Group. They gave me a sheet of Excel which had a hell lot of phone numbers and asked me to call these phone numbers and try to find out, are they interested to join the company? Engineer's job, it's too much overrated. I just felt at that time. But what about startup? You'll straight away start working on a project or a product which will actually show an impact. Now let's get into a very important point. Disclaimer, imagine there are 100 startups. The number of startups that make big, maybe 2 to 3. That's all, and not more than that. So with this point, let's start with another important pros of a startup: RSUs, restricted stock units. What are they? So whenever a company gives you an RSU, you are like a partner to the company. That means indirectly you own some part of the company. What happened with Freshworks a few months back? Do you remember? The Freshwork has a headline like 30 or 40% of the employees turned millionaires. So how was it possible? It was because of RSUs. Whenever you join a startup, you will be allocated a certain number of RSUs, probably 4,000, 5,000, 10,000, and every RSU will have a value, maybe 100 rupees, maybe 500 rupees, maybe 1,000 rupees. So how is this value calculated? There are various factors here. There is a financial team which actually decides this. It mainly depends on what is the net worth of your company, what are the recent investments, what is the burnout of the company for every month. There are a lot of factors which actually decides the value of an RSU. If your startup goes well, it gets into IPO and it performs outstandingly well, you have a very fair chance to get a huge lump sum amount of money from these RSUs. Sounds yummy, right? I mean, a huge lump sum money. But there is a clause here: your company has to get into IPO and the company has to sustain in the market at least for 6 to 8 months. Because as soon as a company gets into IPO, we cannot sell all the RSUs. There will be a lock-in period. You have an awesome product. Your company debuted into an awesome IPO, and a lot of people invested in your company, and your company sustained for the next 6 months without any huge deviations in the share value. This will probably give a lot of money. Awesome. So we discussed a lot of pros here, and there's another awesome pros which normally happens with all the startups. That is, every Fridays there might be happy hours. So what are happy hours? I know few of you people got it, and for those who didn't get it, that's okay. You'll learn that when you get into a startup. So we discussed a lot of pros here. One, the great learning curve offered by these startups. Second, the money. The third, the RSUs. The fourth one will be your work will have impact on the organization. So whatever work you do, that will be recognized in the organizational level. Now let's get started with some cons of joining a startup. One of the biggest problems with a startup job is it is never stable. So what do you mean by stability? Imagine you work for a big company like Cisco, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. These companies have a hell lot of products, right? They have close to 5, 10, 15 clicking products which gives them a lot of money. So what happens if a product fails? Imagine you work in Microsoft. What if the operating system fails in future? Consider Windows 15 or 16 flops. What happens then? Microsoft can sustain that failure because it has a hell lot of products, and at least other products will compensate for the loss that is happening in the operating system. But what happens in a startup? So a startup will have hardly 1 to 2 products and if the product fails, you will be laid off. Yes, you heard it right. A lot of examples in recent times. Company closing doors completely. Example, Lido. It's a e-learning platform, I believe. A lot of examples of companies shutting their doors completely because their product failed. You can lose a job if a product fails. Awesome. So we spoke about layoffs. What is the con of layoff? As I told you before, what is a pro of joining a startup? You get paid really well. If you are laid off, you are already paid high. Imagine you try other companies, they probably might not be able to afford you. You heard it right. If you are paid high, the biggest con is like you will have limited options when you try to find another job. The next thing, so-called work-life balance is virtually inexistent in startup companies. So what the hell is this work-life balance? There are a few people who sit in front of a computer for 15-16 hours. They don't complain about this. It's completely up to you. Work-life balance doesn't have an exact definition. As the word says, you should have a life outside work. If your company gives that, you have a perfect work-life balance. Joining a startup probably might put that work-life balance into jinx. Okay, so finally, one major con is like, talk about RSUs that might probably give a lot of lump sum money if it goes to an IPO, a successful IPO, I can say. What if a company doesn't make it? Yes, all the RSUs are wasted. There are two ways by which you can earn money from RSUs. One being a buyback. A buyback is when a company actually purchases it back with a certain value. You just earn some amount of money there. In this case, if a company doesn't make it into an awesome IPO, you will lose all the RSUs. So we discussed a lot of things, the pros, cons. These are very good in paper, right? We know, we personally know what are the pros, we personally know what are the cons. It's up to us to actually decide should we join or not. How to decide the startup you're joining is worth joining? Considering the pros and cons, they are common to all the startups. Imagine you get placed in an AI startup. You need to assess few things before you join that startup. How do I assess is a startup worth joining? I look at the target audiences. Yes, that's the only visible way to find out does a startup have potential. Okay, so potential is one thing, implementing is another thing. Implementing is up to the company. So is there a potential for a startup to actually boom in the industry? We'll have to research that before joining any startup. Awesome. So considering your startup has really good target audiences, as I told before, target audiences and implementation, they're two different things. If your product isn't great, target audiences doesn't matter. So what next? I was really disheartened some of the layoff news recently, especially by Better.com. The way the layoff was handled was really bad. It reminds me of another point. See if a company and the company management is ethical. So what is ethical? There are a few minor ethics that every company should follow. First thing first, maybe 150 years back when J.R.D. Tata founded Tata Group, 100 years back, Tata was a startup. So whenever we hear the name of Tatas, we get like irrespective of how company perform, they will stand by employees. If things go bad, Tatas do stand by their employees. What happens in recent startups? Startups are laying off like without any reasons. They have money, they have very good funding, they are about to reach that profitable mark, still they are laying off employees. This raises a serious question about ethics that these companies are following. In the end of the day, it clearly shows the company is very busy in their profitable model, not concerned about the employees who worked hard for them to bring their company to the level that it is today. Very important point, research. Does the company have a good ethical history? If a company has a history of laying off employees despite being profitable, stay away from those companies. It might happen to you any day and you might regret the decision to join the startup. Awesome. These are the two parameters. There might be a lot of parameters in theoretical world. Honestly, I just check out these two parameters. Is the product going to boom? Does it have a very good target audience? Is the company ethical? Like, does it have a layoff history with some nonsense reasons? So in this video, I talk practical things. You know, whenever you Google, you get a lot of theoretical things there which actually do not help you. I try to keep things practical. I hope these videos help someone to decide, do you want to get into startup or an MNC? Some awesome contents are coming up. Subscribe to the channel and let's catch up again. Thank you for watching.